welcome back to part 3 of Cod's General Crew Tour. I'm Cod Director Paul Ferrace, and behind the camera is Evan, who are you recovering from the beating and thrashing I gave you over the misstep on the clock thing? All right, well, try not to shake too much. Anyway, we're in Cod's control room, and the control room is a very important place because this is where Cod is dived, surfaced, and in an emergency, you can steer from down here, although normally the main helm is up in the conning tower. That'll be our next stop for the next program. But anyway, down here in the control room, we have, basically it's divided, for the sake of explanation, into the port and starboard, or the dry and, this is the wet side, and the dry side. Wet and dry because on this side we're moving hydraulics and water around, that's the wet stuff. And on the other side is electrical and air distribution, the dry stuff, okay? So I'm gonna let Evan maneuver around. On the forward bulkhead, we've got the auxiliary helm. It's clutched in through a mechanical drive to the main helm up above in the conning tower. Now we have a power steering motor. It's very, very efficient. It allows even a small child to steer this big sub, but it makes noise. So if you have to rig for silent running, you're going to turn that power steering motor off down in the pump room below our feet, and you're going to need 3 burly guys to move that wheel under silent but manual power. We've talked about that on Steering the Boat. Go back and look at that episode. Because it's a steering station, unlike on a surface ship, you never see where the boat is going. You are just following a gyro compass repeater. You have motor order telegraphs for port and starboard. Get around here and have a look at that, Evan. You've got a rev counter. You know how fast you're going, roughly, from that pit sword that was so problematic. Rudder angle indicator, you have a clock face rudder angle indicator, stuff you need like a dashboard of a car. Let's step back here. Dead center in the room, on the forward end I should say, is the main master gyro compass. Now it has a window for viewing, but that's just to calibrate. When you want to know what your compass heading is, you're looking at the various gyro repeaters around the boat that will drive. So that's steering, auxiliary emergency steering. Now you'll shift steering down here, as I said, when you want to rig for silent running, or perhaps we have flooded the conning tower. Evan, remember that time you left the hatch open when we were diving? When that Canadian Coast Guard cutter started depth charging us. Anyway, suffice to say, we bailed it out and we survived. So come around here, Evan. In the forward port quarter, we have a signal flare ejector for signaling friendly ships and airplanes. Hey, don't attack us, we're on your side. Sometimes they listen. And most importantly, we have the Christmas tree. Now, this is the diving station. The hull opening indicator board, also known as the Christmas tree, has red and green lights to indicate the status of various hatches, doors, vent valves, and things. You have to have a green board to safely dive. And ours is fully functional, thanks to our crew, Dave and Phil, and Jim Newton probably had his hand in on that as well. A lot of people have, Daryl over the years have worked on maintaining that. The diving alarm, of course, tells you to dive 2 oogas from the klaxon, and this board hopefully will go to green very quickly when we have a green board. The chief of the watch, and we have a great picture right here, we'll do a zoom in on that later. The chief of the watch will then start venting the ballast tanks using the hydraulic manifold. Now these levers hydraulically open air vents at the tops of the ballast tanks, allowing air to escape and water to flood in the flood ports along the keel or the bottom of the boat. As we're diving, lookouts have dropped down from the conning tower shears and now are manning the bow and stern planes. These controls control the angle or steepness of our dive. We have bubble indicators. We have clock face, bow plane indicator, and a stern plane indicator to give us an indication of where they are. Here's a great photo of last patrol, 7th patrol. And of course, our shallow water gauges, and then the deep water gauge. Cod, of course, being a Gato class boat, we're the last of the thin skin classes of boats. Our pressure hull is 11/16" thick mild steel. So we have a test depth of 300 feet. The deep water gauge is pegged off at 450 feet, so we have a little bit of wiggle room. Suffice to say, at 200 feet, the hull is making creaking and groaning noises to scare the hell out of the new guys. But, you know, below 300 feet, you go deeper, you avoid the warranty. We have a barometer. In fact, we had several barometers in here. We're still looking for those on eBay. And the barometer was somewhat important. When you had a green board, they would bleed a little additional compressed air into the boat, and they would watch that barometer. If the barometer jumped and stayed at that slightly higher reading, it meant the air wasn't escaping. It turned out not to be quite the foolproof indicator, but it was something that was done in World War II and I believe after the war. Hey, you submarine guys, let me know. Did you bleed air into the boat? How long into the 60s did they do that? I'm not sure that the Nuki boats did that. Again, you have your light indicators here, rise and dive for the bow and the stern planes. Now, Cod, being a Gato built an electric boat, these large wheels are the manual backups. Normally, the crewmen are using these little levers right here. I'll move the picture. These are powered. This will move the bow planes in and out because, of course, on the surface, the bow planes are rigged against the hull. But this is what's controlling the angle. Power. It's always good to have power. Same thing back here. Now, if you have a casualty, then you're going to use the big wheels to manually drive it, and there's the shaft. Not all fleet boats had the same arrangement. Canned food in every nook and cranny. In the back here, we have our trim manifold. Don't look too much at that because we've got stuff because we're working on the Radio Shack. But there's the trim manifold in the corner. And the trim manifold basically allows you to move water around the boat to various trim tanks to balance the boat. Every day you'd make a trim dive where you would dive and level off the boat, move water around through the trim tanks, and then keep it that way and then surface so that when you made a crash dive, you wouldn't lose control of the boat. You would have the boat in trim. We have a navigator station back here with some early LORAN. And of course, navigators don't like the red light, so they could have a white light on and they can have the curtain closed to not screw up with the dark adaptation of the rest of the crew. Now, we present the control room as if it were nighttime because of the cool rig for red. The red light dilates your pupils so that if you go topside in the darkness, your eyes are pretty well adjusted once you hit the bridge and you can see clearly. Otherwise, in a white light environment, it might take 25 minutes or more for your eyes to acclimate, for your pupils to dilate fully. So in a red light environment, your eyes are pretty much dilated to begin with, although lookouts and the ongoing watch will wear red goggles. Hey, there's a good cutaway idea, Evan. Put a picture in one of the lookouts wearing their dark adaptation red goggles. They'll wear those red goggles for about 20 minutes before they go up and relieve the watch, and of course they'll take them off. Otherwise, they're not going to see anything. Let's see, we have another great picture here. We are so blessed to have these wonderful photos. There's the chief of the watch looking at the Christmas tree in that photo. And of course, there's a cup right here. You think after 82 years, these guys could bring a coffee cup 30 feet to the scullery. That's just another story for another day. We have the conning tower, and we'll be talking about that soon. In World War II, the ladder was this way, so it was in line with the center line of the ship, and that's why the hatch is kind of ovoid in that direction. But after the war, they on a lot of boats, they shifted them athwartships. I like saying that word, athwartships. And the reason for that was that the diving officer who would be seated on this stool would have immediate tactile response to his diving crewman here in the event there was a screw up, rather than having to reach around or through a ladder. I believe Silver Sides and Drum have the original ladder positioning, but we were modified early in the 50s. Over here is the hatchway down to the compressor, the pump room. And the reason why it's a mesh rather than a solid hatch, when you turn on those electric compressors, they are sucking in so much air to compress that, of course, you don't want to collapse the deck. So that allows air to rush down into the intakes. The most important thing about a submarine, of course, isn't that it dives, because all ships can dive once. The important thing about a submarine is it can come back to the surface. And because of those compressors crunching air and putting it into storage bottles in the ballast tanks, we can use these valves here on the air manifold to blow out the seawater, bringing us up to the surface. Now the man working the air manifold holds the wrench in his hand, and he'll move it among the various banks and vents to put air in to bring us to the surface. And we do maintain some air in our tanks for firing the horn and starting engines and things, thanks to the Cleveland Fire Department. On the dry side up here, we have electrical distribution. It's live, so that's why we have plexi barriers locked. The gyro compass power system here. We're still missing the auxiliary gyro power panel. That was scavenged from us for support ships. We are working on probably replicating one because our sister boats often will have that. The hydraulic manifold, Paul's in too big of a hurry. The air manifold continues further aft. But while we're here, let's do an alarm test. Evan, how's your sound?
Good.
Okay, good. All right, so collision alarm. What was that? I think we have an it's cold, maybe some condensation. That's not the whoop, whoop, whoop of the collision alarm, which would, of course, signal that we have to close all the watertight doors to limit the flooding to wherever the hull's been breached. Well, let's see what the general quarters sounds like. Is this somebody's disco? Dave! Well, we'll tell Dave later. We got to work on this. Electronic generated systems. They're funky and funny, especially when you get cold weather and then warming and then cold and you get a little condensation on contacts. I'm sorry, we'll come back. We're back a day later, and what a difference a day makes. It was 24 degrees the other day and cold as hell. Today, the outside temperature here in Cleveland is a balmy 59, which, boy, talk about creating corrosion. But Dave, our maintenance and restoration manager, jumped to it. So now here is the correct sound of a collision alarm. Close all the watertight doors. General quarters, battle stations alarm. All hands, man your battle stations. Surface, if I say that, gun crew. Otherwise, torpedomen know this is their call to action. I kind of like the techno disco. That had a beat. There we go. Fix that. Thanks. But now the diving alarm. Can't screw around with mechanical generated sound makers. That's pretty good. Inclinometer over here. Oh, and the self-destruct switch to blow up your IFF and ultimately the boat. We should probably keep, well, anyway, Evan, you're not feeling suicidal or anything, are you? Okay. Remember, you get paid from here, so don't do that. Anyway, so we generally show the room rigged for red because it is pretty dramatic, and frankly, it hides a lot of housekeeping sins. Now, we're going to go complete red here, just to give you an idea how we generally present the room. You can pan that around. You know, even in wartime, in fact, it was the reason why these boats were built with air conditioning, was that condensation, in addition to cooling off and making the crew somewhat more happy to be living aboard a sub, especially in the tropics, condensation on electronics was the devil. So anyway, I'm going to put this emergency white back on. I want to point out our low pressure vent risers. This is the original crushed cork insulation. Some boats, and you know who you are, thought that they want to have the Captain Nemo effect and have all this polished copper tubing. This is copper tubing underneath this. And they will chip all this original insulation off and polish that up to make it look like Captain Nemo's organ on the Nautilus. Not accurate. If you look at all the pictures of these boats in service, you have this insulation on for the simple reason that otherwise the man working this part of the manifold would be in a shower with the Venturi effect, condensing water out of the atmosphere on these tubes, and he'd be getting a shower. Some communication equipment, sound-powered phone junction right here. Black boxes for our IFF. I'm standing over the canned food locker. And I got to tell you, this stack right here doesn't belong. It's temporarily standing here because we're working on the Radio Shack, and the Radio Shack is not included on this part of the tour because it's being worked on. But when we get that back up to speed, we are going to have such a lovely Radio Shack tour, because that really deserves a segment of its own. Suffice to say, this little niche here that's being occupied by these radios here is where you would stand to look at your SD aircraft radar display screen, all 1 3/4 inches of that screen right here. That's the dipole antenna that goes up and down like a periscope to give you a warning of aircraft in the area before you surface the sub. And again, as I mentioned, the canned food storage locker and our super secret Radio Shack, which I have to say, the guys are doing an excellent job redecking. So kudos to our decking crew. That's Dave and curator Ben. And I think you've helped a little bit too on that, haven't you? Yeah. So, and then the door into the most important compartment, at least in my estimation, the galley and cruise mess. But that's coming up. So I want to thank you for joining us. Remember, hit the like, subscribe, the notification bell. And if you have any questions or comments, please chime in on the comments section. We want to hear, if you're a submariner on a fleet boat, what are your impressions? What are your memories of the control room? Is there anything that you want to add? Please put that in there. It's a two-way street. Okay? Thanks for joining us, and let's get those alarms fixed.